Brodes Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on in to Bleacher Report Live. Guess what? The Phillies are 20 games over 500. 20 games. And I don't want to hear it for a damn second that the only reason why that's the case is because of their opponents. That's stupid. That's silly. The Braves just lost to the Padres and were embarrassed on the same exact weekend that their broadcast team elected to throw shots at the Phillies and say, well, I mean, they barely played anybody. Shut your damn mouth, because it's so damn difficult over 40, 50-plus games to be where they are right now, no matter who you are watching play your team. I watched the Colorado Rockies sweep the Texas Rangers. It happens. You lose to bad teams. So the fact that this Phillies team isn't losing is very important to me, and I value that tremendously. And yeah, guess what? They're going to drop a series against a good opponent. Hell, they'll probably drop a series against a bad opponent, because everybody goes through that. The Rangers won the World Series last year. You can go dissect their schedule from 2023 and see plenty of examples where they fell on the road against a team that's not necessarily good, or when the Atlanta Braves won the World Series. You can look at a sequence that they would probably like to have back, but I'm watching Trey Turner go down and someone getting slotted into the two-hole like JT Realmuto or Bryson Stott or anybody else, or Cody Clemens hits the lineup, he starts raking. They have answers everywhere. They have a great bullpen. They have a phenomenal starting rotation. And the reason why Zach Wheeler's numbers are great, if you know anything about the game of baseball, right? If you actually are smart and intelligent when it comes to the sport, you know that Zach Wheeler has been one of the best pitchers in all of baseball over the last 3-4 seasons. And what, do they just play easy teams all throughout the last 3 or 4 seasons? Right? Aaron Nola was projected to be the best pitcher available on the market when heading into free agency. So much so that the Atlanta Braves were ready to pounce, and unfortunately, they struck out, no pun intended, and the Phillies re-signed him. And the reason why is because there's plenty of examples since Aaron Nola came into the league about 9 or 10 years ago where he has been one of the best pitchers in the National League since entering the league. Did they play an easy schedule over the last 9, 10 seasons? Absolutely not. So the reason why this team is performing so well with their starting rotation is because they are lethal. It's not about who they're playing. They're lethal. This is the same core that went to the World Series 2 years ago, that went to the NLCS and realistically should have beat the Arizona Diamondbacks, but they shot themselves in the foot. But this is the same team that excuse me, I'm throwing up just thinking about the disgrace and the horrible amount of national media that's throwing shade at this core. But this is the same group that has been legitimately competing for a World Series and just coming up shy by a hair over the last 2 years. And I'm supposed to believe that they're not actually good? Do you know how stupid that sounds? I'm just saying. Now, look. I'm reading a book right now, all right? And I'm not the biggest reader in the world, but I've been dabbling lately. So far, I've read, I think, 9 books or so, 8 books. So I'm starting to dabble, right? And I picked up this one right here, Becky Lynch. I'm big in WWE. And the reason I bring this up is she was talking about at one point, it's all about her journey. It's incredible. And I'll relay this back to some basketball as well. Michael Jordan, when COVID was happening and the world shut down and his 30 for 30, wasn't a 30 for 30, whatever it was, though. The Last Dance came out. He talked about how he would come up with stuff just to motivate himself, right? And same with this book. That's why I'm bringing it up here as well. Becky Lynch, same thing. The way that she sort of had her mindset, she would make things up to try and get herself wired in the right mindset to motivate herself. Well, this team, they hear everything that's going on. And there's a part of me that would love for Bryce Harper, for JT, for Schwarber, for Nick to take on all this noise, right? All these dumb morons, all these dope and pathetic idiots that think that we're not good enough. Shut up! I want that attitude. And maybe they are bottling it up. Whatever it takes. Look, it's a long journey. It's 162. It is a grind. So whether you think that they should utilize outside noise, whether you think they shouldn't utilize outside noise, reality is sometimes you have to grab onto something. Sometimes you have to make stuff up. However you get to the finish line, you get there. And if this team bottles up all that outside noise and uses it to their advantage to really set the tone, well then, so be it. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, quite frankly. So we're going to take a look at our Bleacher Report poll of the show. And the question is, why are the Phillies 20 games over 500? Is it because their schedule? Or is it because they're great? And it's a very, very, very simple answer for me. They're great. Kyle Schwarber is one of the best power hitters in the game today. He leads off, and by the way, he walks too. This dude's walking out of his ass. So he's constantly getting on base. Bryce Harper's starting to heat up, so he's doing his thing. Alec Boehm leads Major League Baseball in RBIs. And the reason why that's important is they're doing it against starting pitching with some pretty respectful names. It doesn't matter what the Nationals' record is. They just beat Trevor Williams, who has a sub-3 ERA, has only allowed one home run all year long, and they knocked him out of the ball game in the 5th inning. The dude goes 4 1/3, throws 90-plus pitches. He's a lethal weapon. He's a really sharp pitcher. Forget the record of the Nationals. That's not the point. And by the way, they're not the the White Sox. Like, there's the White Sox and the Rockies and that level of horrible baseball. And then there's the teams that are just a little bit below 500. They're capable of winning games, okay? It's not as if a team like Washington, who is not the Dodgers, and they're not teams with that level of pop, the New York Yankees, the Philadelphia Phillies, but let's not act as if. I want to give you their record right now as we stand today. Remember, they just got swept by the Phillies in a 3-game set. So prior to this series with the Phillies, the Nationals were 20-22. 20-22. So they're essentially winning half of their games. That is a team that's capable of winning baseball games, but not against the Phils. Not in Citizens Bank Park when it sounds like it's October, yet it's May 15th, 16th, 17th. The place is selling out. It's electric as hell. The place is freaking out when runs are getting scored, when they're smoking doubles into the gap. Where do you breathe when you're the opposing pitcher? Because it's not when Kyle Schwarber's up. That's automatic stress pitches because at any point he can barrel it up and tattoo it to right field. Or you're walking him. The guy is walking at an outrageous clip. So is Bryson Stott. Bryson Stott's walks from last year to this year is mind-numbing. Go take a look at what he did in his first 2 seasons and look where he's at right now. His patience at the plate, his ability to work at bats is already unreal. Whether there's 2 strikes, the guy's just a machine. So Bryson Stott's doing it. Everyone's doing it. Edmundo Sosa's doing it. The only guy who's not doing it is Whit Merrifield. And I guess a little bit of Nick Castellanos, but I think that sort of is what it is. Everybody else has been a huge part to this team. Alec Boehm is a star now. Alec Boehm's a star. He's not just good. He's a star. He's protecting Bryce. We just witnessed a scenario where a team elected to pitch to Bryce Harper because they thought that that would be a better chance than going after Alec Boehm. I want you to let that settle in. That's how deep of a lineup this is. And it's not a deep lineup because of the teams they're playing, because there are individually some good starters that they are doing some really good damage against. It's more along the lines of, this is why when Dave Dombrowski went out there and over the last few off seasons after the postseason ended, or whether it was after a season ended in a way that we didn't like, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos, Trey Turner, extending JT Realmuto, re-signing Aaron Nola, getting the Zach Wheeler thing figured out. There was a reason why it was, whoa, look what Dave is doing in Philadelphia. People mock the contracts, once again, in a very stupid manner because they're not understanding the sport. But once they settled in and got accustomed to this team, their brand, the DNA of how they're supposed to play, and then start tweaking things, then watch out. Because they used to be a poor defensive team. Not anymore. And part of that was Bryce Harper had an injury. Bryce Harper had surgery. Bryce Harper could only DH, which meant now Kyle Schwarber has to play every day in left field. Well, that's not right. Now Rhys Hoskins over at first base, who's a poor defender, had to play every day in the field. That's not right. At the time, Alec Boehm was a horrible defender. He became someone sensational over at third base. I recently, last night actually, on the radio, spoke with Scott Lauber, who covers the Phillies for the Inquirer, and he was saying, because we were talking about, like, yo, dude, what's up with Alec Boehm? How the hell did he make this type of progress? And he said there's probably even people that are in that organization right now that have no idea how it happened, because he spoke to some respected names in the franchise, and they projected Alec Boehm to be sort of a guy that you would have to live with making horrible decisions over at third, but hopefully his power starts to develop with his offense and you can live with it, sort of like a Rhys Hoskins. Well, he flipped that insanely and made it a 180 without even blinking an eye. So now you're good defensively. You used to be atrocious defensively. Now you're good defensively. And now you had someone like Ranger Suarez, who you had, but has taken a big step to the point where his ERA is like 1.37. A 1.37 ERA is your third starter. And once again, I've watched Wheeler, Nola, and Ranger Suarez do it in the postseason before against better teams than they're playing right now. So it's not as if I'm blindly trying to say that, whoa, I mean, Ranger Suarez is this phenomenal player just based off of the right now. I've watched this team get to the World Series with him. I've watched teams make NLCS runs, and he's only gotten better since then. So what do you want me to do with that? What do you want me to do with that? I also can't wrap my head around the fact that there are fans of other teams out there, and those teams win 100 games every year. And how do they think they get to 100 wins? Is it that they play 90-win teams for 162 games and then they end up getting 100-plus wins? How do they get there? Do they not recognize that everyone plays these teams, right? Everyone has the luxury of beating up on bad opponents. And in years past, the Phillies didn't even do a good job of it. There were times where it marinated that, here you go, the Marlins are going to be on your schedule soon. They don't know how to even beat the Marlins. That used to crush you. That used to be your kryptonite. That whenever a horrible team came to town or you went to a horrible team, you failed miserably. That's where you have to try and salvage some things and get some W's and be sharp. Get some confidence. They wouldn't. So now that they do, let me get this straight. I'm supposed to be bothered by this. I'm supposed to not have any joy in this. I'm supposed to act as if this isn't anything good. And this is nothing, right? Like, apparently, us as a city, us as Philadelphians, are not supposed to embrace what they're doing right now and have zero positive feelings, have zero takeaways, and we're supposed to just sit here in silence? Because your city would be doing that too in this case? Come on. It's just hysterical to me. So what this team has been doing is magnificent. Take a look at what just happened against the Washington Nationals. Christopher Sanchez, that would be your 5th starter. 7 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, no walk batters, 8 strikeouts. That would be your 5th starter. They have 4 starters. Yes, 4 starters in the top 20 of ERA in the National League. Yeah, that's going to help you win some games. That's also going to put your bullpen in a good situation because all of your starters this weekend went 7 or 7+ innings of work. Zach Wheeler, 7 1/3, 2 earned runs. Aaron Nola, 7 innings pitched, 2 earned runs. Had to deal with a Harper error over at first base. The only area that I feel Bryce Harper needs some work on over at first base is when the ball goes to his right, he seems to have a little bit of a, I don't know if I should go to the right. I don't know if I should allow the second baseman to get it. Then I'll work my way back over to first base. So he sort of needs to read that a little bit because Aaron Nola covered over at first. He tried to make a throw. He pulled Nola off the bag. And then, unfortunately, Aaron Nola allowed a home run. Yeah, the home runs are still a problem for Aaron Nola. It does still leave the ballpark a little too frequently for my liking. But, you allow 2 earned runs and you go 7, then that's the last thing I'm angry about. One thing that this team does so well, and there's so many of them, it's not one thing, but a part of this team that I want to focus on is how they gather the lead early. And now you have to try and play catch up and then also keep pace for what the Phillies can do offensively. Because in a blink of an eye, Alec Boehm could have his best swing of his career and pull one to left field with an absolute moonshot. And now the Phillies have 11 runs. How are you ever going to score 11 runs when this starting pitching is in your face? In your face. And they had to deal with injuries. So they're dealing with guys going down. Trey Turner was hitting 350 at the time of him going down. 350. Do you know how hard it is to continue to win when you lose a 350 hitter that hits right in front of your superstar in Bryce Harper? That's not normal. And by the way, JT slotted in there and smacked around 450. They're damn good. They're deep. Rojas, Pache, Marsh, you name it. It doesn't matter who. They're getting contributions everywhere to the point where we're trying to figure out a way to keep Cody Clemens because he deserves it. Because every time he steps up to the plate at this point, he seems to have a chip on his shoulder and do something very positive. And then there'd be an outburst. He's the reason why Bryce Harper was able to walk off the Nats. Even if you're down, I talk about having a big lead early or at least just taking a 1-run, 2-run lead early. What's even more special is if they're down 3 with 2 innings to go. You never get a chance to take a deep breath. Stott can hit a solo shot. And he was struggling earlier in the season. Then he explodes this month and becomes an absolute force. But if he hits a solo shot, Phillies lose the lead again. Here's Cody Clemens tying it up in the 9th with a home run of his own. And then your bullpen, it goes to extras, so you're at home. You got to get out of the top of the 10th. No outs, man on second, as the new rules are applied. Gregory Soto says, no. So now you get this offense at home with the ruckus crowd I already mentioned, with everybody delivering in big moments, as I mentioned. You get out of the 10th unscathed. Now what happens? Bryce Harper walks you off. Name a hypothetical, and I bet you it already happened in a win. Cody Clemens, Rojas and Nick Castellanos hitting home runs on that West Coast swing. I believe, was that Los Angeles when they played the Angels? West Coast swing? Name a scenario, it's happened. Rojas homer, Nick Castellanos from the dead homer? Dude, name it, it's happened. Complete game shutout? Happened. It's happened. They do it so many different ways. That's not going to change. It's who they are. They're pissed off that last year happened the way that it did because they were at home. They had Nola and Wheeler set up. Their offense went quiet. There were other decisions that at the time I was very angry about. Pulling Christopher Sanchez in Game 4 in the NLCS. Rob Thompson had an advantage. It was bullpen game Diamondbacks. It was starter Phillies. He removed Sanchez after 2 1/3 and made it an even playing field with the bullpen, which then resulted in you having to have your back against the wall, going to Craig Kimbrell, who was definitely shaky at the time. So Rob put himself in that uncomfortable position by how he handled the starter. He also lived and died with Johan Rojas, bases loaded, 4th inning, when your team was built for offense. Can't happen. But then you remove yourself from it all because it's been a few months, and you recognize that really where it all went south was the chase rate stuff. And that's why over the offseason, we heard it from Dave Dombrowski. We heard it from Kyle Schwarber. We heard it from Bryson Stott. We've seen it from a lot of guys, except for really Nick Castellanos. I don't know if that really resonates in his head too much. He doesn't seem to be a guy that really needs all that information to absorb. So they work on those details. They tweak things. And now they look completely different. I wonder why that is. It's because they're damn good. And nobody seems to give them credit for that, except for us and me. And what I want to make sure Philadelphia fans do is there's 2 ways of thinking here. You have the portion of fans that say, I don't want to commit to this team winning a World Series because it's so early and I don't want to get my heart broken. Nah, come on now. The other side of it is, I don't care about the regular season. Just get me to the World Series, and I'll care when it's the playoffs, because if this doesn't end up resulting in a championship, then screw it anyway. That's wrong too. It's somewhere in between. Enjoy the ride. Embrace the journey. Soak in the excitement. Because, well, there is a purpose of the summer. There is a purpose of the 162. There is an understanding of this team being great and showing their dominance over X amount of months until the playoffs begin. And then once we get there, yes, you have to complete the job. But you can't throw away the fun and electricity on a night-to-night basis in the now and just fast forward. Because there is a beauty in that in its own right. It's not the end-all, be-all. You can't have a great regular season and then not finish the job and complete the mission. But it's not like this doesn't mean anything to you. Like, it's got to mean something. Over the last 3 years, I've watched them start so slow, and it made me sick, and this is all I ever wanted. And now that I'm getting all I ever wanted, I'm supposed to not really soak it in because it's not winning the championship yet? Well, they can't get there. They can't just snap their fingers and be in the World Series right now. So you got to find a way to have the balance. So that's where I need to talk to some of the Phillies fans. And then a lot of my other outrage was towards outside cities trying to tell us about our team. By the way, the same fan bases who probably have never sat down and watched a Phillies game this season. They're just reacting to box scores and records because apparently a 20-22 Nationals team prior to this series that they got their asses swept, they're incapable of winning a baseball game. Incapable. The 20-22 Nationals were incapable of winning a baseball game. And that's why the Phillies won. Even though those people don't even watch the Phillies on a night-to-night basis. They just go to their ESPN apps or Bleacher Report apps and they check the standings. And they check to see what the other team's record was with zero context of what the Phillies are actually doing on the football or on the football field, on the baseball diamond. But with that, we're going to wrap things up here. I love this baseball team. They're 20 games over 500, and it's amazing. Can't wait to continue to see them with their dominance. Thank you all so much for tuning in here on Bleacher Report, and I will see you all very, very soon.